Dun, 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 dun. Welcome to Reading with Drew. I'm your host, Drew Phillips, and I'm gonna be reading a book, like it or not. And guess which book we're reading? We're reading this one. Ah! It's called The Phantom Tollbooth by Nortonjuster. And we're getting to the last two chapters of this glorious adventure that we have embarked on, full of knowledge and thinking, like it or not. I know some people don't like it, but I do. So, on the last chapter, they went to the castle in the sky, and they got rhymeandreason, but the castle started to float away, and they jumped on Tock's back, because time flies, and he's a tick-tocking dog. So, thanks to Tock, they escaped, and that's how the chapter ended. So, let us conclude this exciting climax finale ending of this awesome, glorious, wonderful book right now, today. It's a special day. They should make this a holiday. Okay, this should be the holiday of the Phantom Tollbooth. Chapter 19, The Return of Rhyme and Reason. Here we go. Sailing past three of the tallest peaks and just over the outstretched arms of the grasping demons, they reached the ground and landed with a sudden jolt. "Quick!" urged Tock. "Follow me! We'll have to run for it!" With the princesses still on his back, he galloped down the rocky trail, and not a moment too soon, for pounding down the mountainside in a cloud of clinging dust and a chorus of chilling shrieks came all the loathsome creatures who choose to live in ignorance and who had waited so very impatiently. Thick black clouds hung heavily overhead as they fled through the darkness, and Milo, looking back for just a moment, could see the awful shapes coming closer and closer. Just to the left and not very far away, where were the triple demons of compromise. One tall and thin, one short and fat, and the third exactly like the other two. As always, they moved in ominous circles, for if one said here, the other said there, and the third agreed perfectly with both of them. And since they always settled their differences by doing what none of them really wanted, they rarely got anywhere at all, and neither did anyone they met. Jumping clumsily from boulder to boulder and catching a hold with his cruel, curving claws was a horrible, hopping hindsight. A most unpleasant fellow whose eyes were in the rear and whose rear was out in front. He invariably leaped before he looked and never cared where he was going as long as he knew why he shouldn't have gone to where he'd been. And, most terrifying of all, directly behind, inching along like giant soft-shelled snails with blazing eyes and wet, anxious mouths, came the gorgons of hate and malice, leaving a trail of slime behind them and moving much more quickly than you'd think. "Faster!" shouted Tock. "They're closing in!" Down from the heights they raced, the humbug with one hand on his hat and the other flailing desperately in the air, Milo running as he had never ran before, and the demons just a little bit faster than that. From off on the right, his heavy, bulbous body lurching dangerously on the spiny legs which barely supported him, came the overbearing know-it-all, talking continuously, a dismal demon who was mostly mouth. He was ready at a moment's notice to offer misinformation on any subject, and while he often tumbled heavily, it was never he who was hurt, but rather the unfortunate person on whom he fell. Next to him, but just a little behind, came the gross exaggeration, whose grotesque features and thoroughly unpleasant manners were hideous to see, and whose rows of wicked teeth were made only to mangle the truth. They hunted together, and were bad luck to anyone they caught. Riding along on the back of anyone who'd carry him was the threadbare excuse a small, pathetic figure whose clothes were worn and tattered, and who mumbled the same things again and again in a low but piercing voice.
Well, I've been sick, but the page was torn out. I missed the bus, but no one else did it. Well, I've been sick, but the page was torn out. I missed the bus, but no one else did it.
He looked quite harmless and friendly, but once he grabbed on, he almost never let go. Closer and closer they came, bumping and jolting each other, clawing and snorting in their eager fury. Tock staggered along bravely with rhyme and reason. Milo's lungs now felt ready to burst as he stumbled down the trail, and the humbug was slowly falling behind. Gradually the path grew broader and more flat as it reached the bottom of the mountain and turned toward wisdom. Ahead lay light and safety, but perhaps just a bit too far away. And down came the demons from everywhere, frenzied creatures of darkness lurching wildly. Here's a picture of all the crazy demons. Oh, take it in. Woo! Okay. That's a very, very good picture. I like that. Yeah. Okay. And down came the demons from everywhere, frenzied creatures of darkness lurching wildly toward their prey. From off in the rear, the terrible Trivium and the wobbly, gelatinous giant urged them on with glee, and pounding forward with a rush came the ugly Dilemma, snorting steam and looking intently for someone to catch on the ends of his long pointed horns, while his hoofs bit eagerly at the ground. The exhausted humbug swayed and tottered on his rubbery legs, and a look of longing on his anguished face.
I don't think I can,
he gasped as a jagged slash of lightning ripped open the sky and the thunder stole his words. Closer and closer the demons loomed as the desperate chase neared its end. Then, gathering themselves for one final leap, they prepared to engulf first the bug, then the boy, and lastly the dog and his two passengers. They rose as one, and suddenly it stopped, as if frozen in midair, unable to move, staring ahead in terror. Milo slowly raised his weary head, and there in the horizon, for as far as I could see, stood the massed armies of wisdom, the sun glistening from their swords and shields, and their bright banners slapping proudly at the breeze. For a moment everything was silent. Then 1,000 trumpets sounded, then 1,000 more, and, like an ocean wave, the long line of horsemen advanced slowly at first, then faster and faster, until with a gallop and a shout which was music to Milo's ears, they swept forward toward the horrified demons. Charge! There in the lead was King Amaaz, his dazzling armor embossed with every letter in the alphabet, and with him the mathematician, brandishing a freshly sharpened staff. From his tiny wagon, Dr. Discord hurled explosion after explosion to the delight of the soundkeeper, while the busy Dine collected them almost at once. And, in honor of the occasion, Chroma and the Great led his orchestra in a stirring display of patriotic colors. Everyone Milo had met during his journey had come to help. The men of the marketplace, the miners of Digitopolis, and all the good people from the valley and the forest. The spelling bee buzzed excitedly overhead, shouting, "Charge! C-H-A-R-G-E! Charge! C-H-A-R-G-E!" Canby, who, as everyone knew, was as cowardly as can be, came all the way from conclusions to show that he was also as brave. And even Officer Shrift, mounted proudly on a long, low, dashing, galloped grimly along. Cringing with fear, the monsters of ignorance turned in flight, and with anguished cries too horrible ever to forget, returned to the damp, dark places from which they came. The humbug sighed with relief, and Milo and the princesses prepared to greet the victorious army. Well done, stated the Duke of Definition, dismounting and grasping Milo's hand warmly. Fine job, seconded the Minister of Meaning. Good work, added the Count of Contonation. Congratulations, proposed the Earl of Essence. Cheers, recommended the Undersecretary of Understanding. And since that's exactly what everyone felt like doing, that's exactly what everyone did. It's we who should thank, began Milo, when the shouting had subsided, but before he could finish, they had unrolled an enormous scroll. And with a fanfare of trumpets and drums, they stated in order that henceforth and forthwith let it be known by all men that rhyme and reason reign once more in wisdom. And there's a picture before I go on. The two princesses bowed gratefully and warmly kissed their brothers, and they all agreed that a very fine thing had happened. And furthermore, continued the proclamation, the boy named Milo, the dog known as Tock, and the insect hereinafter referred to as the humbug are hereby declared to be heroes of the realm. Cheer after cheer filled the air, and even the bug seemed a bit embarrassed at having so much attention paid to him. Therefore, concluded the Duke, in honor of their glorious deed, a royal holiday is declared. Let there be parades throughout every city in the land, and a gala carnival of 3 days' duration, consisting of jousts, games, feasts, and follies. The 5 cabinet members then rolled up the large parchment and, with many bows and flourishes, retired. Swift horsemen carried the news to every corner of the kingdom, and, as the parade slowly wound its way through the countryside, crowds of people gathered to cheer it along. Garlands of flowers hung from every house and shop and carpeted the streets. Even the air shimmered with excitement, and shutters, closed for many years, were thrown open to let the brilliant sunlight shine where it hadn't shone in so long. Milo, Tock, and the very subdued humbug sat proudly in the royal carriage with Amaaazing, the math magician, and the 2 princesses, and the parade stretched for miles in both directions. As the cheering continued, Rhyme leaned forward and touched Milo gently on the arm. They're shouting for you, she said with a smile. But I could never have done it, he objected, without everyone's help. That may be true, said Reason gravely, but you had the courage to try, and what you can do is often simply a matter of what you will do. That's why, said Amaaazing, there was one very important thing about your quest that we couldn't discuss until you returned. I remember, said Milo eagerly. Tell me now. It was impossible, said the king, looking at the mathematician. Completely impossible, said the mathematician, looking at the king. Do you mean? Stammered the bug, who suddenly felt a bit faint. Yes, indeed, they repeated together. But if we told you then, you might not have gone, and as you've discovered, so many things were possible, just as long as you don't know they're impossible. And for the remainder of the ride, Milo didn't utter a sound. Finally, they'd reached a broad, flat plain midway between Dictionopolis and Digitopolis, somewhat to the right of the Valley of Sound, and a little to the left of the Forest of Sight. A long line of carriages and horsemen stopped, and the great carnival began. Gaily striped tents and pavilions sprang up everywhere as the workmen scurried about like ants. Within minutes, there were race courses and grandstands, sideshows and refreshment booths, gaming fields, Ferris wheels, banners, bunting, and bedlam, almost without a pause. The math magician provided a continuous display of brilliant fireworks made up of exploding numbers which multiplied and divided with breathtaking results, the colors, of course, being supplied by chroma and the noise by a deliriously happy Dr. Discord. Thanks to the soundkeeper, there is music and laughter, and for very brief moments, even a little silence. Alec Bings set up an enormous telescope and invited everyone to see the other side of the moon, and the humbug wandered through the crowd accepting congratulations and recounting in great detail his brave exploits, most of which gained immeasurably in the telling. And each evening, just at sunset, a royal banquet was held. There was everything imaginable to eat. King Azaz had ordered a special supply of delicious words in all flavors, and for those who liked exotic foods, in all languages too. The math magician had provided innumerable platters of division dumplings, which Milo was very careful to avoid, for no matter how many you ate, when you finished there was more on your plate than when you began. And, of course, following the meal came songs, epic poems, and speeches in praises of the princess and the 3 gallant adventurers who had rescued them. King Azaz and the math magician pledged that every year at this same time, they would lead their armies to the mountains of ignorance until not one demon remained, and everyone agreed that no finer carnival, for no finer reason, had ever been held in wisdom. But even things as fine as all that must end sometime, and late on the afternoon of the 3rd day the tents were struck, the pavilions were folded, and everything was packed ready to leave. "It's time to go now," said Reason, "for there is much to..." Okay, wait, hold on. There's this guy singing. He's like, that's what he said. That's his song. "For there is much to do." And as she spoke, Milo suddenly remembered his home. He wanted very much to go back, yet somehow he could not bear the thought of leaving. "And so you must say goodbye," said Rhyme, patting him gently on the cheek. "To everyone," said Milo unhappily. He looked around slowly at all the friends he had made, and he looked very hard so as to not forget any of them for even an instant. But mostly he looked at Tock and the humbug, with whom he had shared so much, the perils, the dangers, the fears, and best of all, the victory. Never had anyone had 2 more steadfast companions. "Can't you both come with me?" he asked, knowing the answer as he said it. "I'm afraid not, old man," replied the bug. "I'd like to, but I've arranged a lecture tour, which will keep me occupied for years." "And they do need a watchdog here," barked Tock sadly. Milo embraced the bug, who, in his most typical fashion, was heard to mumble gruffly, "Bah!" but whose damp eyes told quite a different story. Then the boy threw his arms around Tock's neck and, for just a moment, held on very tightly. "Thank you for everything you've taught me," said Milo to everybody as a tear rolled down his cheek. "And thank you for what you've...
And thank you for what you've taught us,"
said the king, and as... I almost fell off my chair. And as he clapped his hands, the little car was brought forward, polished like new. Beep, beep. And there's our heroes with rhyme and reason. Milo got in, and with one last look, started down the road with everyone waving him on. "Goodbye," he shouted. "Goodbye, I'll be back."
"Goodbye," shouted Azaz. "Always remember the importance of words." "And numbers," added the math magician forcefully. "Surely you don't think numbers are important as words?" he heard Azaz shout from the distance. "Is that so?" replied the math magician a little more faintly. "What if..." "Oh dear," thought Milo. "I hope they don't start it all again." And in a moment they had faded from sight as the road dipped, turned, and headed for home. They did it! They won! They got Rhyme and Reason back. The armies of the Kingdom of Wisdom came in and scared away all the demons. All those demons were like, "Hey, we out. We gone. We ain't messing with this no more. So, what do you guys think? Should I just read the rest? Because the next chapter is just the ending.
and it's only a few more pages. I say we should just do it and start another book with Reading with Drew. What do you think? Okay, well, in that case, here we go. Let's do it. Chapter 20. Goodbye and hello. As the pleasant countryside flashed by and the wind whistled a tune on the windshield, it suddenly occurred to Milo that he must have been gone for several weeks. I do hope that no one's been worried, he thought, urging the car on faster. I've never been away this long before. The late afternoon sun had turned now from a vivid yellow to a warm, lazy orange, and it seemed almost as tired as he was. The road raced ahead in a series of gentle curves that began to look familiar, and off in the distance the solitary Tollbooth, why couldn't I say that, appeared, a welcome sight indeed. In a few minutes he reached the end of his journey, deposited his coin, and drove through, and almost before realizing it, he was sitting in the middle of his own room again. It's only 6 o'clock, he observed with a yawn. And then in a moment he made an even more interesting discovery. And it's still today! I've been gone for only an hour! He cried in amazement, for he'd certainly never realized how much he could do in so short a time. Milo was much too tired to talk and almost too tired for dinner, so, without a murmur, he went off to bed as soon as he could. He pulled the covers around him, took a last look at his room, which somehow seemed very different than he'd remembered, and then drifted into a deep and welcome sleep. School went very quickly the next day, but not quickly enough, for Milo's head was full of plans, and his eyes could see nothing but the Tollbooth and what lay beyond. He waited impatiently for the end of class, and when the time finally came, his feet raced his thoughts all the way back to the house. Another trip! Another trip! I'll leave right away. They'll be so glad to see me, and I'll... He stopped abruptly at the door of his room, for where the Tollbooth had been just the night before, there was now nothing at all. He searched frantically throughout the apartment, but it had vanished just as mysteriously as it had come, and in its place was another bright blue envelope, which was addressed simply, For Milo, who knows the way. He opened it quickly and read, Dear Milo, I have now completed your trip, courtesy of the Phantom Tollbooth. We trust that everything has been satisfactory, and I hope you understand why we had to come and collect it. You see, there are so many other boys and girls waiting to use it too. It's true that there are many lands you've still to visit, some of which are not even on the map, and wonderful things to see that no one has yet imagined. But we're quite sure that if you really want to, you'll find a way to reach them all by yourself. Yours truly. And the signature was blurred and couldn't be read. Milo walked sadly to the window and squeezed himself into one corner of the large armchair. He felt very lonely and desolate as his thoughts turned far away, the old, foolish, lovable bug, to the comforting assurance of Tock standing next to him, to the erratic, excitable Dine, to the little Alec who he hoped would someday reach the ground, to Rhyme and Reason without whom wisdom withered, and to the many, many others he would remember always. And yet, even as he thought of all these things, he noticed somehow that the sky was a lovely shade of blue, and that one cloud had the shape of a sailing ship. The tips of the trees held pale, young buds, and the leaves were a rich, deep green. Outside the window there was so much to see, and hear, and touch, walks to take, hills to climb, caterpillars to watch as they strolled through the garden. There were voices to hear, and conversations to listen to and wonder, and the special smell of each day. And in the very room in which he sat, there were books that could take you anywhere, and things to invent and make and build and break, and all the puzzle and excitement of everything he didn't know, music to play, songs to sing, and worlds to imagine, and then someday make it real. His thoughts darted eagerly about as everything looked new and worth trying. Well, I would like to make another trip, he said, jumping to his feet, but I really don't know when I'll have the time. There's just so much to do right here. Yes. Woo! Oh man, I like how he wrapped it up. That was good. Yes, very good. I love it. Such a great book. Man, if you've got kids, like this will teach them something. Make them learn and make them imagine things. And this is the very essence of who we are as human beings. Never lose your imaginativeness and your wonder and your growth and learning and progressing. You know, I try my hardest not to be stagnant. So, it's just something that is tough, but and especially as you get older. But I try to hold on to my childhood as much as I can. So, oh man, this book is just so awesome. Since 1966, Yearling has been the lead name in classic award-winning literature for young readers, with a wide variety of titles. Yearling paperbacks entertain, inspire, and encourage a love of reading. Yes. And of course, just the fact that they have that in there at the end of reading books, because a book can take you anywhere, just like this one. I love that. And I think that's awesome for your mind, to your brain. It's kind of funny because my whole life I hated reading books. Besides when I was in school doing funny voices in front of everyone, I didn't read at all. So to be able to, actually respect books and to, enjoy them and, just to have the discipline to sit and read, is, and then you get something out of it. It's not just for nothing. So yeah, I love it. And reading books has definitely helped me in my life for sure. So, okay, here's a little thing on Nortonjuster. And there's a picture too, I'll show in a second. Nortonjuster was an architect and planner, professor emeritus of design in Hampshire College, and the author of a number of highly acclaimed children's books. These include the Caldecott Award-winning The Hello, Goodbye Window, illustrated by Chris Rashka, The Dot and the Line, which was made into an Academy Award-winning animated film, and The Odious Ogre, also illustrated by Jules Pfeiffer. And then it has Jules Pfeiffer is the author of 2 books for young readers, The Man in the Ceiling and A Barrel of Laughs, A Veil of Tears, as well as the picture books Bark George, Rupert Can Dance, I Lost My Bear, Meanwhile, and By the Side of the Road. He has won a number of prizes for his cartoons, plays, and screenplays. Jules Pfeiffer lives in New York City. All right, so this concludes our epic journey of The Phantom Tollbooth by Nortonjuster and illustrated by Jules Pfeiffer. And this is just, I can't get enough of this book. I'm so glad that I own it. And it was like $10 maybe off Amazon. So, I'm sure it's at your local bookstore. This is just such a good one to have, and just to have in my arsenal. I'm like, yes, because I remember reading it as a kid, and this is one of the books I actually enjoyed when I had to read in school. I'm pretty sure we read it in school. So I was thinking too, wouldn't it be cool if they made like a prelude to this story and the lands there? Like, how did rhymeandreason get stuck in the castle in the sky, with all the demons? What caused them to get captured or whatever? You know what I mean? Like, what if they did like a prelude to the story? Or even afterwards, like this could go in many different ways, this story. So I think that's awesome that that he came up with this idea. So there you have it. Yeah.
They did it. The heroes won. Yeah.
And anyways, so sorry this has been a long recording, but I hope you all enjoyed it. And I hope you have a wonderful April 22nd, 2025. And I hope you have an excellent rest of the week. Go Nuggets, go Denver, go Avs. You know, I love living in Colorado. I love reading books for y'all. So hit me up if you got any comments on the story, anything for me, leave a comment. If you liked or like my videos in any kind of way, leave a like and like it, because that's what I like, and we all need likes. So yeah, subscribe if you want. I don't have tons of content, but you know, I guess I'll try to keep up with it. But
I have a life too, okay? Gah! I have things to do. I have laundry and dishes, just like you.
But anyways, yeah, have a great day. See ya. Bye. And enjoy.